In 1882 Arizona Territory, Sarah McKenna, a 7 months pregnant widow struggling to maintain her late husband's ranch, discovers a wounded Apache warrior named Naiche, tangled in barbed wire during a violent thunderstorm. Despite the danger to herself and her unborn child, and knowing that helping an Apache could mean death if discovered by the vengeful townspeople who blame the Apache for recent raids, Sarah makes a life-altering decision to save him. What begins as an act of desperate compassion becomes a profound connection that will challenge everything, both belief about enemies, redemption, and the true meaning of family. The lightning split the Arizona sky like God's own axe, illuminating Sarah McKenna's swollen belly as she struggled against the wind toward the barn. 7 months along, every step felt like carrying stones in her womb, but the horses were screaming, their terror pierced through the thunder, primal and urgent. "Please, God, not tonight," she whispered, her late husband Thomas's coat whipping around her like dark wings. 3 months since the fever took him. 3 months of trying to hold together a ranch that seemed determined to die with him. Another flash. In that instant of white brilliance, she saw him. A figure, human, tangled in the new barbed wire fence Thomas had installed just weeks before his death. The figure wasn't moving. Sarah froze. Every instinct screamed at her to go back inside, bolt the door, pretend she'd seen nothing. The Apache had been raiding settlements for months. Just last week, the Carlson family had been found dead, their barn burned, their cattle gone. The whole town was mad with revenge fever, but the figure still wasn't moving. She took a step closer, her hand instinctively moving to protect her belly. The rain was coming down in sheets now, turning the ground to mud that sucked at her boots. 20 feet, 50, 10. Another lightning strike revealed the truth that would change everything. It was an Apache warrior, maybe 25 years old, his long black hair plastered to his face by rain, and what looked sickeningly like blood. The barbed wire had caught him across the chest and arms, each attempt to escape only entangling him further. His buckskin shirt was torn to ribbons, revealing deep gashes that were reading freely. His eyes were closed, Sarah's breath caught. She knew she should feel hatred. Thomas might still be alive if the Apache hadn't been driving away the help, making it impossible to get a doctor in time. The sensible thing, the safe thing, would be to go inside, let nature take its course. By morning he'd be dead, and she could tell Sheriff Watson she'd found a body, maybe even collect the bounty. But then his eyes opened. They were dark as winter nights, and filled with a pain so profound it transcended language, race, or the artificial boundaries humans drew between each other. In that moment, he wasn't Apache or enemy. He was simply a human being, suffering and afraid. "Please," he whispered in accented English, his voice barely audible above the storm. "My son needs—" Then his eyes rolled back, and he went limp, held upright only by the cruel embrace of the wire. Sarah stood there in the rain, her mind racing. A son. This warrior had a son. Somewhere a child was waiting for a father who might never come home, just as her own child would wait for a father who never would. "Damn you," she whispered, though she wasn't sure if she was cursing the Apache, Thomas for dying, God for putting her in this position, or herself for what she was about to do. She ran, as much as a 7 months pregnant woman could run, back to the barn. Her hands shook as she grabbed the wire cutters Thomas had bought, the leather gloves, the old blankets. She paused at the medicine shelf, then swept everything into a crate. Laudanum, whiskey, the precious few bandages she'd been saving. Back at the fence, the warrior was unconscious, but breathing. Sarah pulled on the gloves and began to cut. Each snip of the wire seemed to echo like a gunshot in her mind. If anyone saw her, if anyone found out, the Apache were the enemy. That's what everyone said. Sheriff Watson had made it clear. Anyone caught helping them would be treated as a traitor. And a woman alone, pregnant, with no man to protect her. She'd be run out of town if she was lucky. If she wasn't, the last wire snapped. The warrior's dead weight collapsed toward her, and Sarah barely managed to guide his fall, her pregnant belly making it impossible to truly catch him. He hit the mud with a splash that covered them both. "Come on," she grunted, grabbing him under the arms. "You don't get to die on me now, not after I've risked everything." It took her nearly an hour to drag him the 100 yards to the barn. An hour of stopping every few feet to catch her breath, her back screaming, the baby kicking in protest. An hour of jumping at every sound, certain that at any moment riders would appear on the horizon. Inside the barn, she laid him on a bed of hay in an empty stall far from the door. Her horses, Buttercup and Moses, snorted nervously at the smell of blood, and stranger, but Sarah had no time to calm them. By lantern light, she could see the full extent of his injuries. The barbed wire had done vicious work, leaving gashes across his chest, arms and legs. But there was more. A bullet wound in his shoulder, partially healed but reopened by his struggle with the wire. He'd been running from something, or someone. Sarah had helped Thomas with enough cattle injuries to know the basics of wound care. She heated water on the barn's small stove, tore her spare petticoat into strips for bandages. As she worked, she talked, partly to fill the terrifying silence, partly to keep herself from thinking too hard about what she was doing. "My name is Sarah, Sarah McKenna. This is my ranch, was my husband's ranch. He's dead now, 3 months. Fever took him quick, which I suppose is a mercy, though it didn't feel like mercy at the time." She cleaned the wounds, trying not to notice how her patient's face contorted with pain, even in unconsciousness. "I don't know why I'm helping you." "That's a lie. I do know. It's because you said you have a son. And because," she paused, her hand moving to her belly, "because I know what it's like to be alone and afraid, to know that death is circling like a vulture, waiting for you to stumble." She applied the laudanum liberally, then began stitching the worst of the gashes with thread meant for repairing saddles. Her father had been a doctor back in Boston. Before drink took him, she'd watched him work enough times to have some idea what she was doing. "Maybe. You picked a hell of a time to need help," she continued, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. "The whole territory's gone mad. Your people raid. My people retaliate. Your people raid again. Around and around it goes, like a snake eating its own tail. And here we are, you and I, caught in the middle of it all." The warrior stirred, muttering something in Apache. His hand moved, searching for something, a weapon probably. Sarah gently pushed his hand back down. "No fighting tonight," she said softly. "Tonight you rest. Tomorrow we'll figure out what happens next." She finished the last stitch as the storm began to calm outside. The warrior was breathing easier now, the laudanum and whiskey doing their work. Sarah sat back on a hay bale, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. Her back ached, her feet were swollen, and the baby was doing somersaults. What had she done? If Sheriff Watson found out, if anyone found out? She thought of Mary Carlson, her friend, dead along with her husband and 2 children. She thought of all the families driven from their homes, all the blood spilled on both sides. And here she was, harboring the enemy in her own barn. But when she looked at the unconscious warrior, she didn't see the enemy. She saw a man who'd spoken of his son with his potentially dying breath. She saw someone who'd been shot, who'd been running, who'd been desperate enough to try crossing barbed wire in a storm. "What's your story?" she whispered. "What brought you to my fence on the worst night of the year?" As if in answer, he stirred again. His eyes opened, unfocused at first, then sharpening as they found her face. "You," he breathed, his English heavily accented, but clear. "You saved me. Why?" Sarah met his gaze steadily. "Because you asked. Because you mentioned your son. Because," she struggled for words, "because maybe I'm a fool. My name is Sarah. What's yours?" He studied her for a long moment, his dark eyes taking in her pregnant belly, her wedding ring, the exhaustion written across her face. "Naiche," he said finally. "My name is Naiche."
"Well, Naiche," Sarah said, standing with difficulty.
"You're safe for tonight. Try to rest. Don't try to leave. You'll tear open those stitches, and I'll be damned if I went through all this trouble just to have you bleed out in my barn." She turned to go, but his voice stopped her. "Your husband. He will be angry you helped Apache." Sarah paused at the stall door, not turning around. "My husband is dead. It's just me now. Me and—" she touched her belly, "and this little one. I am sorry for your loss." The sincerity in his voice made her turn. "Are you, even though we're enemies? Death is death," Naiche said simply. "Grief is grief. These things do not know Apache or white. They touch all the same." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. It was the first time since Thomas's death that anyone had offered condolences without immediately following up with advice about selling the ranch, finding a new husband, or moving back east. "Thank you," she whispered. She left the barn and made her way back to the house, the storm now reduced to a gentle rain. Inside, she bolted the door, checked the windows, and loaded Thomas's rifle, placing it beside her bed. Then she sat at the kitchen table and put her head in her hand. What happened when Naiche was well enough to leave? Would he bring others back? Had she just signed her own death warrant? And what about the baby? What kind of mother puts her unborn child at risk for a stranger, an enemy stranger at that? But beneath all the fear and doubt, there was something else. For the first time in 3 months, she'd done something that felt right. Not safe, not smart, but right. Outside, the storm finally broke, giving way to a clear night sky filled with stars. Sarah looked out the window toward the barn, where a wounded Apache warrior named Naiche was hopefully sleeping, hopefully healing. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Sheriff Watson made his rounds every few days, and the next visit was due soon. She'd have to hide Naiche, have to lie, have to pretend everything was normal, while harboring what the law would consider a dangerous fugitive. But tonight she'd saved a life, a father's life. She placed both hands on her belly, feeling the baby shift and kick. "Your daddy would probably be furious with me," she whispered, "but I'd think deep down he'd understand. We're all just trying to survive out here. Apache, white. It doesn't matter when you're bleeding out in a storm." A coyote howled in the distance, answered by another, then another. The sound usually frightened her, but tonight it seemed almost like a lullaby, wild and free and utterly honest. Sarah climbed into bed, the rifle within easy reach. She didn't expect to sleep, but exhaustion took her almost immediately. Her last thought before darkness claimed her was of Naiche's eyes, when he'd first opened them in the storm, so full of pain but also something else. Hope, the same thing she'd been searching for since Thomas died, the same thing that had been dormant in her chest until tonight, when she'd made the choice to cut those wires. Maybe that's what this was really about, not saving an Apache warrior, but saving herself. Proving that even alone, even pregnant, even scared out of her mind, she could still choose compassion over fear, humanity over hatred. The baby kicked again, strong and insistent. "I know, little one," she murmured. "It's a complicated world you're coming into, but maybe we can make it a little less complicated. One choice at a time." Sarah woke to the sound of horses. Not her horses. She knew Buttercup and Moses's every whinny and snort. These were different, multiple riders, coming up the main road. She was out of bed and at the window before her pregnant body could protest. Thomas's rifle already in her hands. The sun was barely up, painting the desert in shades of pink and gold. 3 riders were approaching, still a good quarter-mile away, but she recognized the lead rider's silhouette immediately. "Sheriff Watson." "No, no, no," she whispered, her heart hammering. She threw on her robe and boots, not bothering with proper dress. The rifle stayed in her hands as she stepped onto the porch, trying to look like she'd been up for hours, rather than startled from sleep. Watson and his 2 deputies, young men whose names she'd never bothered to learn, pulled up in front of the house. The sheriff tipped his hat, but his eyes were cold as they surveyed the property. "Morning, Mrs. McKenna. Heard some concerning news." Sarah kept her expression neutral, though her grip on the rifle tightened. "Oh? What kind of news?" "Apache raiders hit the Donovan place last night. During the storm, Watson spat tobacco juice into the dirt. Killed 2 of their cattle, spooked the rest. Old man Donovan got a shot off. Thinks he winged one of them." Sarah's blood ran cold, but she forced herself to remain calm. "That's terrible. The Donovans all right?" "They're fine, mad as hell, but fine." Watson's eyes narrowed. "Thing is, we tracked blood from their place heading this direction. Trail got washed out by the rain, but you thought you'd check on me," Sarah finished. "I appreciate the concern, Sheriff. As you can see, everything's fine here." One of the deputies, a boy who couldn't be more than 19, pointed toward the barn. "Should we check the outbuildings, Sheriff? Make sure none of them savages are hiding?" Sarah's mind raced. Naiche was in no condition to hide himself. "If they search the barn, that won't be necessary," she said, putting steel in her voice. "I was up half the night with the storm. If anyone had come near my property, I would have heard them. Besides," she patted her belly, "you really think I'd be standing here calm as Sunday morning if there were Apache on my land?" Watson studied her for a long moment. Sarah met his gaze steadily, even as sweat trickled down her back. "All the same," Watson said slowly, "might be good to have a look around. For your safety, you understand." "Sheriff Watson," Sarah said, allowing a tremor to enter her voice, not entirely feigned, "I'm 7 months pregnant, recently widowed, and trying to hold this ranch together with my bare hands. I was up all night scared out of my mind by that storm, and now you want to search my property like I'm harboring fugitives. What would Thomas say if he knew you were treating his widow this way?" It was a low blow, invoking her dead husband, but it worked. Watson had respected Thomas, had even called him a friend. The sheriff's weathered face softened slightly. "Now, Sarah, no one's accusing you of anything, aren't you?" She let tears come to her eyes, also not entirely feigned. The stress was getting to her. "I've done nothing but try to survive out here, and now you come to my home at dawn, frightening me with talk of raiders and searching my property." The younger deputy shifted uncomfortably in his saddle. "Sheriff, maybe we should—" "Quiet, Jenkins." Watson hadn't taken his eyes off Sarah. She could see him calculating, weighing options. Finally he sighed. "All right, Mrs. McKenna. We won't trouble you further. But you be careful, you hear? These Apache, they're desperate, dangerous. They wouldn't think twice about killing a pregnant woman if it suited them." "I'll be careful," Sarah promised. Watson turned his horse but paused. "You know, Sarah, this ranch is too much for a woman in your condition. You should think about selling, moving to town, at least until the baby comes. This is my home, Sheriff. My child's inherit. I'm not going anywhere." "Stubborn as your husband was," Watson muttered, but there was a hint of admiration in it. "We'll be increasing patrols in the area. If you see anything at all, you fire 3 shots in the air. We'll come running." "Thank you, Sheriff." She stood on the porch, rifle still in hand, until the 3 riders disappeared over the ridge. Only then did she allow herself to sag against the doorframe, her legs shaking. That had been too close, far too close. She waited another 10 minutes to be sure they were gone, then hurried to the barn as quickly as her pregnant body would allow. She found Naiche awake, sitting up despite what must have been considerable pain, a piece of broken board in his hand, as a makeshift weapon. "They're gone," she said quickly. "You're safe." He lowered the board slowly. In the morning light streaming through the barn's gaps, she could see him more clearly than she had the night before. He was younger than she'd first thought, perhaps only a year or 2 older than herself. His face, beneath the bruises and cuts, was striking, high cheekbones, strong jaw, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. "I heard horses," he said. "Sheriff Watson, he was tracking you. The blood trail from—" She paused. "You raided the Donovan ranch." Something flickered in his eyes. "No raid. I was hunting, on old hunting grounds. Your people's cattle they scatter the deer. I was hungry, took only what I needed. He grimaced. The man, he shot without warning, without trying to speak. Of course he did, Sarah sighed. Everyone's shooting first these days. She moved closer, noting how he tensed. I need to check your wounds, make sure the stitches held through the night. He hesitated, then nodded. As she unwrapped the bandages, he spoke quietly. You lied to your lawman. For me. Why? Sarah focused on her work, noting with relief that most of the stitches had held. I told you last night. You have a son. I couldn't make a child fatherless. Not when I know. She trailed off. You know the pain. Naiche finished. Your child will have no father. No. The word came out more bitter than she'd intended. She softened her tone. But at least my child will have me. That's more than many have these days. As she applied fresh bandages, she became aware of him studying her intently. You are not like the others, he said finally. The others? White people. Settlers. You see me as, he searched for the word human. Sarah sat back on her heels. My father was a doctor in Boston. He taught me that blood runs red in everyone, that pain feels the same no matter the color of the skin that contains it. She paused. He also taught me that whiskey helps with more than just wounds, but that's a different lesson entirely. To her surprise, Naiche's lips twitched in what might have been the ghost of a smile. Your father sounds wise. Is he dead? 5 years now. Sarah stood, gathering the soiled bandages. My mother died birthing me. Thomas, my husband, he was all I had. Now, she shrugged. Now you save Apache warriors in storms. Apparently so. She moved to the barn's small stove. You must be hungry. I don't have much, but I cannot take your food. You can and you will, Sarah said firmly. You need strength to heal. Besides, I have a feeling you'll be my guest for a few days at least. Those wounds won't take kindly to travel. I cannot stay. My son is better off with a father who returns alive than one who dies trying to get home too soon. Sarah put water on to boil. How old is he? Your son? Naiche was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, softly, 6 winters. His name is Dakia. It means one who protects. Where is he? With my sister. In the mountains. Hidden. His voice turned bitter. We are always hidden now. Always running. Your people push us from place to place. Make treaties then break them. Promise food then let us starve. Sarah had no response to that. She knew it was true. She'd heard Thomas and the other ranchers talking, laughing about how the government was solving the Indian problem by making promises they never intended to keep. I'm sorry, she said finally. It's not right. Your sorrow changes nothing. No, she agreed. But it's all I have to offer. That and breakfast. She prepared a simple meal, biscuits, dried beef, some preserved peaches. Thomas had loved. She ate with Naiche in companionable silence, noting how he tried to hide his hunger, taking small bites when he clearly wanted to devour everything. When did you last eat? She asked. Before last night, I mean. 3 days. 3 days. She pushed the rest of her portion toward him. Eat, please. You need it. For the child. The child and I have stores. Not much, but enough. You have nothing. When he still hesitated, she added, consider it payment. Payment. You're going to help me with something while you're here. The fence. The one that caught you. I need to move it. It's in the wrong place, and I can't manage it alone in my condition. Naiche looked at her suspiciously. You seek to make me work for my keep. I seek to give you a reason to accept help, without feeling indebted, Sarah said bluntly. My father taught me that too. Pride is often the only thing people have left. I won't take yours. This time, his smile was fuller, transforming his face. You are strange, Sarah McKenna. So I've been told. A comfortable quiet settled between them. As Naiche ate, Sarah found herself studying him when she thought he wasn't looking. There was a dignity to him, even wounded and vulnerable, a strength that went beyond the physical. Tell me about Dakia, she said suddenly. What's he like? Naiche's face softened in a way that made him look years younger. He is curious about everything, always asking questions. Why does the sun rise? Where do the stars go in the day? Why do the white men hate us? His voice caught on the last question. What do you tell him? I tell him the sun rises because it promises to. The stars never leave, we just cannot see them. And the white man, he paused. I tell him fear makes people do terrible things, that both our peoples are afraid. Are you afraid? Every day. He met her eyes. Are you? Every day, she echoed. The baby kicked hard, making her gasp and place a hand on her belly. Naiche tensed, ready to help, despite his injuries. It's fine, she assured him. The little one is just restless. Has been since, she trailed off. Since your husband died, yes. It's like the baby knows something's wrong, that the world it's coming into has shifted. May I? Naiche gestured toward her belly. Sarah hesitated. It was an intimate thing, letting someone touch her pregnant belly, but something in his eyes, a father's understanding perhaps, made her nod. He placed his hand gently on her stomach, his palm warm through the fabric of her dress. The baby kicked again, right against his hand, and his eyes widened. Strong, he said. A fighter, like its mother will have to be, Sarah said quietly. Naiche removed his hand carefully. In my culture, we believe children choose their parents. This child chose to come to you, even knowing it would be born into hardship. That means it trusts your strength. Tears pricked Sarah's eyes. That's a beautiful belief. My wife believed it, Naiche said, and Sarah caught the past tense. Your wife, dead, 2 winters ago. Your soldier's sickness, the coughing sickness, tuberculosis, Sarah realized. It had swept through the territories, devastating Apache and settlers alike, though the Apache, weakened by forced marches and starvation, had suffered worse. I'm so sorry, Darkia's mother. Yes. He barely remembers her now. Sometimes I see him trying to recall her face, and he pressed a hand to his chest. It cuts like your wire fence. They sat in shared grief for a moment, 2 people who'd lost their partners, trying to raise children in a world that seemed determined to destroy them. How do you do it? Sarah asked. How do you keep going? For him, because the alternative is to stop, and if I stop, he has no one. So I hunt where hunting is forbidden. I take your cattle when my people starve. I run from your soldiers and hide in mountains that were once ours freely. His voice hardened. I survive because my son needs me to survive. And now you're here, wounded in an enemy's barn. In the barn of a woman who is not my enemy, he corrected, though I do not understand why. Sarah stood, beginning to clear the dishes. Maybe because I'm tired of having enemies. Maybe because losing Thomas taught me that life is too short and too precious to waste on hatred. She paused at the barn door. Or maybe I'm just a foolish pregnant woman who makes bad decisions in storms. If this is foolishness, then the world needs more fools. She turned back to look at him. You should rest. Real rest, not the wary half-sleep of the hunted. You're safe here, Naiche. I promise you that. You cannot promise such things. Your sheriff won't be back for days, and when he comes, we'll be ready. I've gotten quite good at lying since Thomas died. Had to keep the vultures from taking the ranch. She left him then, returning to the house to do chores that couldn't wait. But her mind kept drifting to the barn, to the wounded warrior who spoke of his son with such love, who had touched her belly with such gentleness. 3 days passed in a rhythm that felt both foreign and strangely natural. Sarah would wake before dawn, check the horizon for riders, then bring breakfast to the barn. She and Naiche would eat together while she tended his wounds, which were healing with remarkable speed. They would talk about everything and nothing, about Turkey and the coming baby, about the land before the war, when Apache and settlers had sometimes traded peacefully, about Thomas and Naiche's wife, Itza. On the 3rd night, Sarah made a decision that she knew was reckless. You can't keep sleeping in the barn, she said, standing in the doorway with a lantern. It's getting colder, and your wounds need proper rest to heal. Naiche looked up from the piece of wood he'd been carving. A small horse for Darkia. The barn is sufficient. The barn is freezing at night, and you know it. I have a spare room. It was meant to be swallowed hard. The nursery, but the baby won't need it for 2 more months. Sarah, if someone were to find me in your house, then I'm already damned for having you in my barn. At least in the house, I can hide you properly if needed. There's a root cellar under the kitchen. Thomas dug it last year. She could see him wrestling with the decision. Pride versus practicality. Trust versus survival. Why do you continue to risk so much for me? He asked quietly. Sarah set down the lantern and sat on a hay bale, her hand unconsciously moving to her belly. The night Thomas died, I begged God for a sign, for something to tell me I wasn't alone, that there was still goodness in this world my child would be born into. 3 months I waited, 3 months of silence. She met his eye. Then you appeared in my fence during a storm, and instead of hatred or violence, you spoke of your son. Maybe that was my sign. You believe your God sent an Apache warrior to you. I believe God has a sense of humor, Sarah said with a slight smile. Or maybe I just believe that helping you makes me feel less helpless, less alone. Naiche set aside his carving. You speak of loneliness, but you have your people in town. Do I? Sarah's laugh was bitter. The women whisper that I must have driven Thomas to his death somehow. The men circle like vultures, waiting to see how long before I give up and sell. Or worse, they offer to protect me in exchange for... She trailed off, her face flushing. They dishonor themselves, and you with such offers. They see a vulnerable woman and want to take advantage. Your people aren't the only ones who can be savage. Naiche stood slowly, testing his strength. The bullet wound in his shoulder still pained him, but the barbed wire cuts were healing well. I will come to the house. But first, you must know something. Sarah waited, the raid on the Donovan ranch. I told you I was hunting, and that was truth. But not all of it. He took a breath. I was hunting because my people are starving. The reservation they forced us onto has no game, no water. The supplies they promised never come. Children are dying, Sarah. Dakia grows thinner each time I see him. So you risk your life to hunt on land that was once yours freely. Yes, and I will do so again when I leave here. Your sheriff, he will shoot me if he finds me. Your ranchers will hang me. But my son will not starve. Sarah stood, decision made. Then we need to make sure you're fully healed before you go. And she hesitated, then plunged ahead. I have preserved foods, dried meat, canned vegetables, things that will keep. When you go, you'll take what you can carry. I cannot take your food. You have the child coming, and my child will not thrive knowing another child starves. Please, Naiche, let me do this. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You have a warrior's heart, Sarah McKenna. I have a mother's heart. There's a difference. That night, Naiche slept in the house for the first time. Sarah had given him Thomas's clothes, the one she hadn't been able to bring herself to pack away. It was strange seeing him in her husband's shirt and trousers. Like 2 worlds overlapping in ways that shouldn't make sense, but somehow did. She showed him the root cellar, demonstrating how the hidden door worked. If anyone comes, you go down here immediately. There are supplies, water. You could stay hidden for days if needed. You have thought this through. I've had 3 nights of barely sleeping to plan, she admitted. Fear makes for excellent strategy sessions. They sat by the fire after dinner. Sarah in her rocking chair, Naiche on the floor, his back against the hearth. The domesticity of it should have felt wrong, but instead it felt like a reprieve from the harsh world outside. Tell me about Boston, Naiche said suddenly. Your life before this place. Sarah smiled, remembering. It was so different. Green everywhere, not like here. Rain that didn't come with violence but fell soft and steady. My father had a practice on Beacon Hill. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable. Why did you leave? Father's drinking got worse after Mother died. He lost his practice, lost everything. I was 17, working as a seamstress to support us both. Then Thomas came through town, buying cattle for his new ranch in Arizona territory. He was so, she paused, searching for words, solid, steady. He offered me a new life, and I took it. Did you love him? The question was so direct it took her breath away. Yes. Not at first, maybe. At first I loved what he represented. Escape, safety, adventure. But later, yes. He was a good man. Stubborn as a mule and twice as thick-headed sometimes, but good. My wife was chosen for me, Naiche said quietly. Our families arranged it when we were children. I was angry at first. I wanted to choose for myself. But his voice softened. She was like water in the desert. Gentle but strong enough to carve canyons. How long were you married? 7 winters. 7 good winters before the sickness came. They sat in comfortable silence, the fire crackling between them. Sarah found herself memorizing this moment, the peace of it, the strange companionship. In 3 days, Naiche had become, what? Not a friend exactly. Something more complicated. Someone who understood loss in the same bone-deep way she did. I should check the horses, she said finally, starting to rise. I will do it. You're still healing. I am healed enough. You rest. The child needs you to rest. Before she could protest further, he was out the door. Sarah watched through the window as he crossed to the barn, moving with more strength each day. In Thomas's clothes, from a distance he could almost be, no. She wouldn't let her mind go there. A sound from the road made her freeze. Horses, moving fast. Naiche heard it too. He looked toward the house, and she frantically gestured for him to hide. He disappeared into the barn just as 3 riders crested the hill. Not Sheriff Watson this time. These were ranchers. She recognized Bob Donovan and his 2 sons. Her blood ran cold. These were the men Naiche had taken cattle from. Sarah grabbed Thomas's rifle and stepped onto the porch, trying to look calm despite her racing heart. "Evening, Bob," she called out. "Bit late for a social call." Donovan dismounted, his sons following. All 3 were armed. "Sarah, we're tracking an Apache thief. Blood trail led this direction few days back. Sheriff Watson already checked my property," Sarah said, keeping her voice steady. "Found nothing. Watson's too soft." One of Donovan's sons, Jake, the mean one, spat. "Especially on women. We aim to be more thorough. You aim to search my property without cause or warrant. We aim to protect this community," Donovan said. "That Apache took 2 of my best cattle. Would have taken more if I hadn't winged him. And you think he's here? You think I'm harboring cattle thieves? I think you're a woman alone who might be forced to do things against her will," Donovan said, but his eyes were suspicious. "Could be he's holding you hostage, making you lie." Sarah almost laughed at the irony. "Do I look like a hostage, Bob? I'm standing here with a rifle talking to you freely. Even so, we should check." "No." Sarah raised the rifle, not pointing it at them, but making her position clear. "Thomas is barely cold in his grave, and you come here at night frightening his pregnant widow? What would he say, Bob? You and he shared whiskey not 6 months ago. Thomas would understand we're trying to protect. Thomas would shoot you for threatening his wife and unborn child," Sarah said coldly. "And make no mistake, 3 armed men coming onto my property uninvited at night is a threat." Jake Donovan stepped forward. "Now listen here, woman." Sarah cocked the rifle. "One more step, Jake Donovan, and we'll find out if a pregnant woman's aim is still true." "You wouldn't dare," Jake snarled. "Try me. I've got nothing left to lose except this child, and I'll die protecting what's mine." Old Bob Donovan studied her for a long moment, then placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Come on, boys. Mrs. McKenna's right. This isn't proper. But Pa, I said come on." Donovan mounted his horse. "Sarah, you see any Apache, you let us know. For your own safety." "Of course." She stood on the porch, rifle ready, until they disappeared into the darkness. Only then did she allow herself to sag against the doorframe, her whole body shaking. Naiche emerged from the barn, moving quickly despite his injuries. "Sarah, get inside," she whispered urgently. "They might circle back." Once inside, Sarah collapsed into her chair, the rifle clattering to the floor. Naiche knelt beside her, concern written across his face. You should not have taken such a risk. If they had insisted, then I would have shot them. The words surprised her with their truth. I would have shot them to protect you. Why? His voice was intense, his dark eyes searching hers. Why would you kill your own people for an Apache? Sarah met his gaze, her hand moving to her belly. Because my child deserves to be born into a world where kindness matters more than race, where helping someone in need isn't a crime, where, her voice broke, where a mother's love is stronger than fear. Naiche's hand covered hers on her belly. The gesture was intimate, perhaps inappropriate, but Sarah didn't pull away. Your child is blessed to have such a mother, and Dakia is blessed to have such a father. They stayed that way for a moment, hands touching, eyes locked, the world outside forgot. Then the baby kicked hard against their joined hands, breaking the spell. Naiche pulled back. I should leave, tonight. My presence brings danger to you. Your presence brings purpose to me, Sarah said quietly. For the first time since Thomas died, I feel like I'm doing something that matters. Harboring an enemy? Helping a friend. The word hung between them, dangerous and precious. Is that what we are? Naiche asked softly. Friends? Sarah considered the question. 3 days ago, he'd been the enemy. Now, I don't know what we are, she admitted, but I know I don't want you to leave. Not yet, not until you're fully healed. And then you return to your son, and I have my child, and we remember these days as a strange dream, when the world went mad, but 2 people found sanity and each other's company. Naiche stood slowly. Among my people there is a saying, the eagle and the snake can share the same sky, but they cannot share the same tree. What does it mean? It means some things, no matter how much we might wish otherwise, cannot be. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. I know, but for now, for these few days, can't we pretend the eagle and the snake found a way? Yes, Naiche said softly. For now. That night, Sarah lay awake thinking about the touch of his hand on hers, about the way he'd said her child was blessed, about the word friend and how inadequate it felt. She could hear him moving in the next room, probably unable to sleep as well. The house felt different with him in it, fuller, less haunted by Thomas's absence. It was dangerous, this feeling growing in her chest. Dangerous and impossible, and absolutely forbidden. An Apache warrior and a white widow. The town would burn her out if they knew. They'd hang Naiche without trial. But in the darkness of her room, with her hand on her belly and the memory of his touch still warm, Sarah allowed herself to feel it anyway. This strange, unexpected connection, this recognition of one wounded soul by another. Tomorrow would bring new dangers. Donovan wouldn't give up easily. Sheriff Watson would return, and eventually Naiche would heal and leave, returning to his son and his people. But tonight he was here, safe under her roof, and for the first time in 3 months, Sarah didn't feel alone. The 4th day dawned with an unexpected gift. Rain, not the violent storm that had brought Naiche to her, but a steady, gentle rain that would keep visitors away and wash out any tracks. Sarah stood at the kitchen window, watching the drops paint patterns on the glass, when she heard Naiche's footsteps behind her. Good rain, he said simply. Yes, we're safe today. No one rides in this unless they have to. She turned to find him holding the carved wooden horse, now complete. The detail was extraordinary. Tiny muscles etched into the legs, a flowing mane that seemed to move despite being solid wood. It's beautiful, she breathed. It is for your child. Sarah's eyes widened. But you made it for Dakia. I will make him another. Your child should have something, a reminder that once an Apache stayed under this roof and was treated with kindness. Sarah took the horse with trembling hands. Naiche, I can't, please. It would honor me. Their fingers brushed as she accepted the gift, and Sarah felt the dangerous spark again. She stepped back, cradling the wooden horse. Thank you. I'll treasure it. The baby will treasure it. An awkward silence fell between them. The past 3 days had been building to something, and they both felt it. The careful distance they'd maintained was eroding with each shared meal, each conversation, each moment of understanding. "I need to tell you something," Naiche said suddenly, "about why I was really at the Donovan ranch." Sarah set the wooden horse carefully on the mantel. "You said you were hunting." "Yes, but—" He moved to the window, watching the rain. "I was not alone. My cousin, Victoria, was with me. When Donovan shot at us, we separated. I drew their fire so he could escape with the meat. So there were two of you." "Yes. And Victorio, he will have returned to our camp. Told them I was shot, possibly dead." Sarah understood immediately. "They'll come looking for you, perhaps. Or perhaps they will assume I am dead. But if they come—" He turned to face her. "Sarah, my people are not all like me. Some have been so hardened by loss, by betrayal, that they see all whites as enemies. If they find me here, find that you have helped me, they'll kill me." "No," his voice was fierce. "I would not let that happen. But they might try to take you, use you as leverage against the soldiers." Sarah's hand went to her belly. "I see. You understand now why I should leave. Today, while the rain covers my tracks." "No, Sarah, no," she repeated more firmly. "You're not fully healed. That shoulder wound could still reopen. And you said yourself your people are starving. You need to take supplies, and that will take preparation. You are risking too much." "I'm risking what I choose to risk." She moved closer to him. "Naiche, in 3 months, I felt like I was drowning, like the world was nothing but darkness and loss. But these past days, I feel like I can breathe again, like there's still good in the world. That is not because of me. That is your own strength returning. Maybe, or maybe it's both." She was standing close enough now to see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "Stay, a few more days, please." He reached up, his fingers barely grazing her cheek. "You know this is impossible. I know. Your people and mine are not in this room." Sarah covered his hand with hers, holding it against her cheek. "In this room we're just Naiche and Sarah. Just two people who understand loss and loneliness and the fear of raising children in a hostile world." "Sarah," his voice was rough with emotion. "I'm not asking for forever," she whispered. "I know that's not possible. I'm asking for now, for a few more days of feeling like I'm not alone." He pulled her gently against him, and Sarah rested her head on his chest, careful of his healing wound. She could hear his heartbeat, strong and steady. His arms came around her, one hand cradling the back of her head. "This is dangerous," he murmured into her hair. "Everything about this has been dangerous from the start." They stood there, holding each other, as the rain continued to fall. Sarah couldn't remember the last time she'd been held like this. Not since before Thomas got sick. Naiche smelled of leather and sage, of the outdoors and something uniquely him. The baby kicked, and Naiche smiled against her hair. The little one protested. Sarah pulled back slightly, looking up at him. "Or approves. I can never tell." His hand moved to her belly, and this time there was nothing hesitant about it. "May I speak to the child?" Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. Naiche knelt, placing both hands on her stomach, and spoke in Apache. The words were musical, flowing like water. Sarah didn't understand them, but she felt their power. "What did you say?" He looked up at her, still kneeling. "I gave the child a blessing, that it would have its mother's courage and its father's strength, that it would know both sorrow and joy, but always more joy, that it would be a bridge between worlds." Tears flowed freely down Sarah's face. "That's beautiful." Naiche stood, wiping her tears with his thumbs. "You cry off pregnancy." Sarah laughed through her tears. "Everything makes me cry. Yesterday I cried because the sunset was too pretty. Itza was the same. She once cried because a rabbit looked at her kindly. They both laughed, and the tension broke. But the awareness remained. They had crossed a line. They were no longer just refugee and protector. They were something more. The day passed quietly. They worked together to prepare supplies for when Naiche would leave. Dried meat, preserved vegetables, medicine. Sarah taught him which plants in her garden had medicinal properties. Naiche repaired things around the house that Sarah had been unable to manage alone. A loose shelf, a sticky door, the chicken coop that had been damaged in the storm. It felt like playing house, like pretending at a life that could never be. But neither wanted to break the spell. That evening as they ate dinner, Naiche asked, "What will you do after the baby comes?" Sarah considered. "Try to keep the ranch going, I suppose. Raise my child. Survive. Alone? Who else would there be? The only men interested in a widow with a child are those looking for property. Or other things. You could go back to Boston. With what money? And to what? I have no one there anymore." She pushed food around her plate. "This is home now, for better or worse. Among my people, a woman alone with a child would be taken in by family, protected, provided for. Your people have better ways than mine in many things." Naiche was quiet for a moment, then said carefully, "You could come with me." Sarah's fork clattered to her plate. "What? When I leave, you could come, you and the child." "Naiche, that's impossible." "Why?" "You have no love for the town. They treat you as an outsider already. With us, you would be protected. Dakia would love a little brother or sister." Sarah's heart was racing. The offer was insane, impossible. And yet, they would never accept me, a white woman. "Some would not," he admitted, "but others would see what I see. A woman of courage and kindness, and you would be under my protection." "Your protection? As what?" Naiche met her eyes steadily. "As my wife." The words hung in the air like suspended lightning. Sarah couldn't breathe. You're asking me to marry you." "I am saying it would be one solution. A way for us both to not be alone. For our children to have two parents. But we don't, don't we?" Naiche moved around the table, kneeling beside her chair. "Sarah, I have known you 4 days. 4 days, and yet I feel I know your heart better than I knew its. After years. Is that not worth considering? It's insane, yes. The Apache would hate me. The whites would hunt us both, yes. We barely know each other. We know enough. We know loss. We know loneliness. We know what it is to put our children before ourselves." He took her hands, "And we know this feeling between us is real." Sarah's tears were falling again. "Naiche, I can't. My child, it would grow up between two worlds, accepted by neither. As Dakia does now, as all Apache children do now. At least together they would have each other." Sarah pulled her hands free, standing awkwardly. "I need air." She went to the porch, despite the rain. Naiche didn't follow immediately, giving her space. Sarah's mind was reeling. Marriage. To an Apache warrior. Leaving everything behind to live in hiding in the mountains. It was madness. And yet, what did she really have here? A ranch she could barely manage. A town that whispered about her. A future of struggle and loneliness, raising a child who would grow up fatherless. With Naiche, there'd be different struggles, but there would also be partnership, companionship, maybe even love. Love. Did she love him? Could you love someone after 4 days? She thought of his hands gentle on her belly, blessing her child. His voice when he spoke of Dakia. The way he'd held her that morning, like she was precious. The door opened behind her. Naiche stood there, not coming onto the porch, respecting the boundary. "I should not have asked," he said quietly. "It was unfair." "No." Sarah turned to face him. "No, it was honest. That's what we've been, isn't it? Honest with each other from the start. And honestly, what do you feel?" Sarah took a shaking breath. "I feel terrified, confused, lost." She paused. "And more alive than I've felt since Thomas died. Maybe longer, but not enough to come with me. I don't know. I need time to think. Time we do not have much of." As if to emphasize his point, thunder rolled across the valley. The gentle rain was turning into another storm. They went inside, and Sarah built up the fire while Naiche secured the shutters. They worked in synchronized silence, as if they'd been doing this dance for years instead of days. When everything was battened down, they sat by the fire again. Sarah in her chair, Naiche on the floor, but closer than before. close enough that she could run her fingers through his hair if she wanted. She wanted, "Tell me about your life," she said instead. "Before the reservations. When you were a child." Naiche's eyes grew distant. "We followed the seasons, summer in the mountains, winter in the valleys. My father taught me to hunt when I was 2 years age. My mother taught me which plants heal and which harm. It sounds peaceful. We had conflicts with other tribes sometimes, but there was also trade, celebration, life. The land provided everything we needed. And then we came, and then you came. But there was no bitterness in it now. Some tried to live alongside your people at first, but there were too many differences, too many misunderstandings, and some on both sides preferred war to peace. Which were you? I was young. I wanted to fight, to prove myself." He looked at his hands. "Then I met Itza, had Dakia. Fighting seemed less important than providing for them, but you still fight. I survive. There is a difference." They talked late into the night as the storm raged outside, about everything and nothing, about dreams they'd had before life hardened them, about their children, the people they hoped they'd become. Finally, Sarah couldn't keep her eyes open. "I should go to bed." "Yes." But neither moved. "Naiche, yes." "If I said yes, if I came with you, would it be just for the children, just for survival?" He stood, pulling her up with him. His hands cupped her face, thumbs stroking her cheekbones. "No," he said softly. "It would be for this too." He kissed her then, gentle and careful, mindful of her pregnancy and the strangeness of it all. Sarah melted into it, her hands gripping his shoulders. When they pulled apart, both were breathing hard. "I still need time to think," Sarah whispered. "I know, this is all so fast. I know, but..." She reached up, touching his face. "Stay with me tonight, just to hold me. I've been so alone, and the storm..." Yes, they went to her room, the room she'd shared with Thomas. But Thomas was gone, and Sarah was tired of living with ghosts. They lay together fully clothed on top of the covers, Naiche curved protectively around her, his hand resting on her belly. The baby kicked and rolled, more active than it had been in weeks. "I think the little one approves," Naiche murmured against her hair. "Of you or the situation? Both, I hope." Sarah laced her fingers through his. "This is crazy. Yes, we might be making a terrible mistake. Yes, but right now, I don't care. Neither do I." Sarah woke to the sound of horses and men's voices. Many men. Her blood turned to ice as she recognized Sheriff Watson's voice, but there were others too. A mob. Naiche was already up, fully alert, reaching for his weapons. "The cellar," Sarah whispered urgently. "Now. Sarah, please, if they find you, we're both dead. Go." He kissed her forehead quickly, then disappeared toward the kitchen. Sarah heard the subtle click of the cellar door just as someone pounded on her front door. "Sarah McKenna." "Open up. Sheriff's business." Sarah threw on her robe, deliberately messing her hair to look like she'd just woken. She grabbed Thomas's rifle and went to the door, opening it just a crack. "Sheriff Watson." "It's barely dawn." "Open the door, Sarah. We need to search your property. We've been through this. You have no cause. We have cause now." Watson's face was grim. Bob Donovan's boy, Jake, went missing 2 nights ago. His horse came back covered in blood. Apache blood. Sarah's mind raced. "And you think he's here? We found Apache sign near where his horse was." "And Sarah?" Watson's voice dropped. "We found this." He held up a piece of carved wood. A small bird, unmistakably Naiche's work. Sarah had seen him carving it 2 days ago. "I've never seen that before," she lied. "It was on your property line, near the north fence." Sarah's heart hammered, but she kept her face calm. "Apache passed through all the time. That proves nothing. Maybe not, but we're searching anyway. Stand aside. Sheriff, I'm a pregnant widow. You can't just..." "I can and I will." Watson's voice was harder than she'd ever heard it. Jake Donovan might be dying somewhere. If you're hiding something, Sarah, now's the time to tell me. Sarah stepped aside, having no choice. Watson entered, followed by 6 men, all armed. She recognized most of them, ranchers, townsmen, all with faces set in angry lines. Search everything, Watson ordered. House, barn, every outbuilding. Sarah stood in her parlor, rifle still in hand, watching as the men tore through her home. They opened every cabinet, checked every room. Her heart stopped when 2 men approached the kitchen. "What's this?" one called out, pointing at the cellar door. "Root cellar," Sarah said, her voice remarkably steady. "Nothing down there but preserves and potatoes." "Check it anyway," Watson ordered. Sarah watched, her finger on the rifle trigger, as one of the men opened the cellar door and descended. She held her breath, waiting for a shout, a gunshot, something. "Nothing here, Sheriff," the man called up. "Just food stores, like she said." Sarah nearly sagged with relief. Naiche must have found some way to hide himself among the shelves and shadows. The search continued for another hour. They found nothing in the house, but then came a shout from the barn. "Sheriff, you need to see this." Watson and Sarah hurried to the barn. One of the men was holding up bloodied bandages, the ones Sarah had hidden in what she thought was a secure spot. "These are fresh," the man said, "no more than a few days old." Watson turned to Sarah, his eyes cold. "Explain." Sarah's mind raced. "I cut myself on the barbed wire while trying to repair it." "Show me the wound." "Sheriff, that's hardly appropriate. Show me the wound, Sarah, or I'll have the widow Perkins come out here and examine you herself." Sarah knew she was caught. She had no wound to show, but before she could speak, another shout came from outside. "Riders coming. Apache riders." Everyone rushed outside. On the horizon, 5 Apache warriors sat on horseback, watching. Even from a distance, Sarah could see they were armed and painted for war. "Those bastards," one of the men snarled. "They're watching us." "Maybe looking for their friend," Watson said, his eyes never leaving the warriors. Then, louder, to Sarah, "The one you've been hiding." "I haven't. Don't lie to me anymore, Sarah." Watson's voice was tired now. "The bandages, the wooden carving, Jake Donovan missing. It all adds up." The Apache warriors started moving closer, but slowly, deliberately. A threat and a message combined. "Sheriff," one of the men said nervously, "we should get back to town, get more men. We're not going anywhere until we find what we're looking for," Watson said. He turned back to Sarah. "Last chance. Where is he?" Sarah lifted her chin. "I don't know what you're talking about." Watson studied her for a long moment. Then he said the words that chilled her to the bone. "Burn the barn." "What?" "No." Sarah lunged forward, but one of the men caught her. "You can't. My horses are in there. My livelihood." "Then tell us where the Apache is." "Sheriff, please." Real tears were streaming down her face now. "I'm pregnant. I have nothing. Don't do this." Watson hesitated, and for a moment Sarah thought she'd reached him. Then one of the men shouted, "The Apache are coming closer." Indeed, the 5 warriors were now only a quarter-mile away, close enough that Sarah could make out details. One of them might have been Victorio Naiche's cousin. "Burn it," Watson said again. "If there's an Apache hiding in there, he'll come out. If not, then Sarah pays the price for lying to us." "I haven't lied about anything that matters," Sarah screamed as 2 men headed for the barn with torches. "Please, my horse." She broke free and ran for the barn, but someone caught her again, holding her back. She watched in horror as smoke began to rise from the hay. Buttercup and Moses were screaming now, terrified. Sarah fought against the hands holding her, pregnant belly making her clumsy, but desperation giving her strength. Then from the house, Naiche emerged. He walked out calmly, hands visible but near his weapons, every inch the warrior. The men all turned, guns raising. "No," Sarah screamed. "Don't shoot, please. Let the horses out," Naiche said calmly. "They have done nothing wrong." "You son of a bitch," Watson said, his gun trained on Naiche. "You've been here the whole time. I have been healing from wounds your people gave me while I hunted on land that was once freely mine. You stole cattle. You're a thief. I took meat to feed starving children. Your government promised food that never comes. Would you watch your children starve, Sheriff? Don't matter now, one of the men said. Jake Donovan's missing, probably dead, and you're going to hang for it. I have not seen this Jake Donovan. I have been here, healing, under this woman's protection. This woman's a traitor, someone spat. Apache whore. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow, but Naiche's reaction was stronger. He took a step forward, hand moving to his knife. You will not speak of her that way. Or what, savage? The Apache warriors were closer now, close enough that Sarah could see they had arrows nocked. Everyone calmed down, Watson said, though his own voice was tight. We take him in, legal-like. There'll be a trial, there'll be a hanging, someone corrected. And maybe the woman should swing too. No one's hanging anyone without a trial, Watson said firmly. But Sarah could see he was losing control of the situation. The barn was fully ablaze now. Sarah could hear her horse's terror, and it broke something inside her. Let them out, she screamed. For God's sake, let the horses out. Naiche moved then, fast as lightning, not toward the men, but toward the barn. He dodged past the guns, threw open the barn doors, and disappeared into the smoke. Shoot him, someone yelled. No. Sarah broke free again, running toward the barn. Naiche. Moments later, Buttercup burst out of the barn, followed by Moses. And finally, Naiche, coughing, his shirt singed. He'd saved her horses. 3 guns were pointed at him, but he looked only at Sarah. Are you hurt? She asked, reaching for him. I am fine. How touching. Jake Donovan's voice came from behind them all. Everyone turned. Jake Donovan stood there, very much alive, though sporting a black eye and torn clothes. Behind him was an Apache woman, young and pretty, holding his hand. Jake, Sheriff Watson exclaimed. What the hell, boy? We thought you were dead. I'm sorry, Sheriff. Power. Everyone. Jake looked sheepish. I've been with Ayana. We're in love. The silence that followed was deafening. Bob Donovan found his voice first. You're what? I've been meeting her for months. In secret. When you shot at those Apache taking the cattle, pal, you almost shot her brother. I went to make sure he was all right. And, Jake squared his shoulders. We're leaving together, going to California, where no one knows us. Over my dead body. Bob Donovan raised his gun, not at Jake, but at the Apache woman. What happened next was chaos. Naiche moved to protect the woman. The Apache warriors charged forward. The townsmen raised their guns. Sarah threw herself between Naiche and the guns. Stop, she screamed. All of you stop. Miraculously, everyone froze. Sarah stood there, 7 months pregnant, ash from her burning barn raining down around her, and looked at the assembled crowd. Look at us, she said, her voice carrying across the yard. Just look at what we've become. Ready to kill each other over what? Over love? Over hunger? Over fear? She turned to Bob Donovan. Your son loves an Apache woman. So what? Does that change who he is? Does that make him less your son? Then to the Apache warriors, this man saved my horses. Helped me when I had no one. Does his white skin erase his kindness? She looked at Sheriff Watson. You were Thomas's friend. He respected you. Would he want you to burn down his widow's barn? To hang a man for trying to feed his child? Sarah, Watson said quietly, you harbored a fugitive. I harbored a human being, a father, a man who was bleeding and alone. She took Naiche's hands publicly, not caring anymore what they thought. And yes, I've come to care for him, not because he's Apache or despite being Apache, but because he's shown me more genuine kindness in 5 days than this town has shown me in 3 months of widowhood. You're carrying Thomas's child, someone said, disgusted. Have you no shame? I'm carrying my child, Sarah said firmly. And I'll raise it to see people as people, not as enemies divided by color or culture. The Apache warriors had reached them now, forming a semicircle. The townsmen faced them, guns drawn. It would be a massacre on both sides if anyone fired. Please, Jake Donovan stepped forward, pulling Ayana with him. This is my fault. I should have been honest from the start. But I knew this would happen. The hatred, the violence. Can't you see it's killing us all? Your woman's people killed the Carlsons, someone shouted. No, Iana spoke for the first time, her English accented, but clear. Renegades did. Apache, who follow no chief, obey no counsel. We condemn them as you do. Lies. Bob Donovan spat. Pear, Jake said quietly. I was there when the Carlsons were killed, with Iana's people. They had nothing to do with it. They were 20 miles away, trying to survive on the worthless land the government forced them onto. This revelation caused another uproar. Sarah felt Naiche's hand tighten on hers. The situation was spiraling toward violence. Then she felt it, a sharp pain in her abdomen. Then another. No, not now, but her body didn't care about timing. The stress, the exertion, the fear, it was all too much. Naiche, she gasped, doubling over. He caught her immediately. Sarah, the baby, she managed. The baby's coming. It's too early. Tell that to the baby. This shifted everything. Even the angriest of the men looked uncertain. A woman in labor, even a traitor, was something else entirely. We need to get her inside, Naiche said, lifting her easily despite his healing wounds. Don't you touch her, savage, Bob Donovan snarled. Then you deliver the baby, Naiche shot back. You know how? You know what to do if the cord is wrapped. If she bleeds too much? No one answered. I was with my wife through 2 births, Naiche continued, already carrying Sarah toward the house. One lived, one died. I know what to do. I'll help, Iana said, stepping forward. I've delivered many babies. The hell you will, Bob Donovan started. Pa, Jake said firmly. You want Sarah and her baby to die? Because that's what'll happen without help. Sheriff Watson finally took charge. Everyone lower your weapons. Jake's woman and the Apache can help with the birth. Everyone else, back to town. Sheriff, you can't be serious. A baby's about to be born, Watson said firmly. Thomas McKenna's child. Whatever else has happened, that child deserves a chance. We're leaving, now. Reluctantly, the townsmen began to disperse. The Apache warriors remained, but at a distance. Watson was the last to go, pausing at the door where Naiche had carried Sarah inside. This isn't over, he told Naiche. When the baby's born safe, we'll settle this. When the baby is born safe, Naiche agreed, we will be gone. Watson studied him. You'll take her with you. It wasn't a question. If she'll come. Watson was quiet for a moment, then said, Thomas would have shot me for saying this, but maybe that's for the best. She'll never have peace here now, not after this. Then he was gone. The pain came in waves, each one threatening to pull Sarah under. She gripped Naiche's hand so hard she was sure she must be breaking bones, but he never complained. Iana worked with quiet efficiency, having sent Jake to boil water and gather clean cloths. Too early, Sarah gasped, between contractions. It's too early. Babies come when they come, Iana said calmly. This one has decided today is the day. Through the window, Sarah could see smoke still rising from the barn's remains. Her entire life was collapsing and rebuilding itself in a single day. I'm scared, she admitted to Naiche, who was wiping sweat from her forehead. I know, but you are the strongest person I have known. You can do this. What if something's wrong? What if the baby will be perfect, he said firmly. It has to be. It is part of you. Another contraction hit, this one stronger than the last. Sarah screamed, not caring who heard. I can see the head, Iana announced. Dark hair, like the father. Thomas had been blonde. Sarah's eyes met Naiche's in confusion. Dark hair like Thomas's father, Iana corrected smoothly, though her knowing look said she understood more than she let on. Now push, Sarah. Your baby wants to meet you. Sarah pushed, and pushed, and pushed. The pain was beyond anything she'd ever experienced, but Naiche was there, solid as a mountain, whispering encouragement in both English and Apache. I can't, she sobbed at one point. I can't do this without Thomas. He should be here. He should. He is here, Naiche said quietly. In this house he built. In the child you made together. He is here, Sarah, and he would be proud of your strength. Something about those words gave her the final surge of power she needed. With a last, primal scream, she pushed her child into the world. A cry, tiny but fierce, filled the room. "A girl," Aina announced, cleaning the baby quickly. "Small but strong. She's perfect, Sarah." Sarah sobbed as Aina placed the baby on her chest. She was tiny, probably only 5 pounds, but her cry was robust, and her grip, when she wrapped her miniature fingers around Sarah's thumb, was surprisingly strong. "Hello, little one," Sarah whispered. "Oh, hell." The baby's hair was indeed dark, though whether from Thomas's ancestry or some quirk of nature, it didn't matter. Her eyes, when they fluttered open, were the deep blue of all newborns. "What will you name her?" Aina asked. Sarah looked at Naiche, then at her daughter. "Hope," she said softly. "Her name is Hope, because that's what she is." Naiche touched the baby's head gently, reverently. "Hope McKenna. It is a good name. Hope McKenna." Sarah agreed then, making a decision that would change everything, added, "But also, what's the Apache word for hope?" "Goya," Naiche said, his voice thick with emotion. "Hope Goya McKenna," Sarah said firmly. "A child of 2 worlds." Jake, who had been hovering in the doorway, cleared his throat. "The Apache warriors are still outside. They want to know everyone's all right." "Tell them mother and child are well," Naiche said. "Tell them," he looked at Sarah, "tell them I will come speak with them soon." Jake nodded and left. Aina finished tending to Sarah, then stepped back. "I'll give you time alone," she said. "But Sarah, the sheriff was right. You can't stay here now. The town will never accept what happened today." "I know," Sarah said quietly, not taking her eyes off Hope. When Aina left, Sarah and Naiche sat in silence, both mesmerized by the tiny life in Sarah's arms. Hope had stopped crying and was making small, contented sounds. "She's early but strong," Naiche said, "like her mother." "Naiche, what you said about taking us with you, I meant it, every word." Sarah looked up at him. "It would be so hard, for all of us. Your people might never accept us. Hope would grow up between worlds, belonging to neither, or belonging to both," Naiche countered. "Sarah, the world is changing. The old ways, both Apache and white, are ending. Perhaps children like Hope, like Dakia, they are the bridge to something new. And us? What would we be?" Naiche cupped her face gently. "We would be a family. Unconventional, perhaps impossible, but a family. I would raise Hope as my own, if you'd let me. Dakia would have a mother again. And we," he paused, "we would have each other." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. "I loved Thomas. Part of me always will. As I loved Itza. But they are gone, and we are here. Is it wrong to choose life, to choose hope?" Baby Hope chose that moment to open her eyes fully, seeming to look directly at them both. Sarah could have sworn she smiled, though she knew babies that young didn't really smile. "When would we leave?" Sarah asked. "Tonight, after dark. My people will help us. We'll go deep into the mountains, to valleys the white soldiers haven't found. It won't be easy. Nothing about my life has been easy since Thomas died. But this," she looked at Hope, then at Naiche, "this feels right." Naiche kissed her forehead, then, gently, kissed baby Hope. "Then we go tonight." The rest of the day was a blur of preparation. Jake and Aina helped them pack what they could carry: food, medicine, clothes, the few precious items Sarah couldn't bear to leave. Thomas's rifle, his pocket watch, the wooden horse Naiche had carved. As the sun set, Victorio and the other Apache warriors approached the house. Sarah tensed, but Naiche squeezed her shoulder, reassuringly. Victorio looked at Sarah, at the baby in her arms, then at Naiche. He said something in Apache that sounded angry. Naiche responded calmly, firmly. The argument went back and forth for several minutes. Finally, Victorio stepped forward and peered at baby Hope. The baby, as if sensing the importance of the moment, reached out one tiny hand toward him. Victorio's stern expression softened slightly. He said something else, quieter this time. He says the child has spirit. Naiche translated, that any child born into such chaos and choosing to live must be protected. And me? Sarah asked. Victorio looked at her directly then, his eyes hard but not unkind. He spoke in broken English. You save Naiche. You stand between him and guns. You searched for words. You have warrior heart. Not all accept. But I speak for you. It wasn't a ringing endorsement, but it was enough. As they prepared to leave, Sheriff Watson appeared one last time. He was alone, his horse tired from hard riding. Figured you'd be going tonight, he said, dismounting slowly. He looked old, Sarah thought. Old and tired. Sheriff, Sarah started. I'm not here as the law, Watson interrupted. I'm here as Thomas's friend. He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a leather pouch. This is from the sale of your cattle. I sold them this afternoon. It's not much, but it might help. Sarah was stunned. Sheriff, Why? Watson looked uncomfortable. Thomas asked me to look after you if anything happened to him. I haven't done a good job of it. This is the least I can do. The town will be furious with you. Probably, but I'm old, Sarah. Too old to keep fighting wars that have no winners. He looked at Naiche. You'll take care of them. With my life, Naiche promised. Watson nodded, then mounted his horse. I'll tell them you disappeared in the night. No forwarding address. Some will want to search, but I'll discourage it. After a few weeks, they'll move on to other troubles. Thank you, Sarah said, meaning it deeply. Watson tipped his hat and rode away without looking back. They left as the moon rose, 5 Apache warriors escorting them through paths Sarah didn't know existed. She rode Thomas's horse, Moses with hope secured against her chest in a sling. Ayana had fashioned. Naiche rode beside her, leading Buttercup, loaded with supplies. Jake and Ayana had left earlier, heading west toward their own uncertain future. Before leaving, Jake had pressed a letter into Sarah's hand. For my pa, he'd said, when he's ready to read it, maybe never, but just in case. The journey into the mountains was hard, especially for Sarah so soon after giving birth. But every time she faltered, Naiche was there. Victorio too proved surprisingly helpful, often taking the lead to scout the safest paths. They traveled through the night, stopping only to rest and feed hope. As dawn broke, they crested a ridge, and Sarah gasped. Below them was a hidden valley, green and lush despite the desert surrounding it. A stream ran through its center, and she could see Apache wickiups clustered near the water. People moved about, women tending fires, children playing, men working with horses. Home, Naiche said simply, for now. As they descended into the valley, people emerged to stare. Sarah felt their eyes on her, on hope, judging, questioning. She held her head high, though her heart raced. A small figure broke from the crowd, running toward them. Father, Dakia threw himself at Naiche, who dismounted just in time to catch her. The boy was talking rapidly in Apache, clearly overjoyed. Then he noticed Sarah and stopped, suddenly shy. Naiche's something to him, and Dakia approached slowly. Sarah dismounted carefully, kneeling despite her exhaustion, so she was at the boy's eye level. Hello, Dakia, she said softly. Your father has told me so much about you. The boy looked at his father, who nodded encouragingly. You are the white woman who saved him. I helped him. As he helped me. Dakia studied her with eyes so like his father's. It made Sarah's heart ache. Then he looked at the baby in her arms. Small, he observed. Yes, her name is Hope. Would you like to see her better? Dakia nodded. Sarah adjusted the sling so he could peer at Hope's face. The baby was awake, her blue eyes taking in this new world. She has sky eyes, Dakia said wonderingly. Yes. Will she be my sister? Sarah's breath caught. She looked at Naiche, who was watching them with an expression of such tenderness, it made her eyes fill with tears. If you'll have us, she said to Dakia, both of us. Dakia considered this seriously, then reached out to touch Hope's tiny hand. The baby gripped his finger immediately. "She's strong," he said, echoing his father's earlier words. Then, with the simple acceptance of childhood, "Yes, she can be my sister." An older Apache woman approached then, Naiche's sister. Sarah realized from the resemblance. She said something sharp to Naiche, clearly disapproving. But when she saw Hope still gripping Dakia's finger, something in her expression shifted. She spoke to Sarah in Apache. Naiche's translated, "She says any child that can grip so strongly will grow to be useful, and that you look like you need rest and proper food." It wasn't exactly a warm welcome, but it was practical, and Sarah could work with practical. Over the following days, Sarah found her place, slowly, carefully. Some Apache remained suspicious, even hostile, but others, particularly the women who had also lost husbands to the ongoing conflicts, showed her small kindnesses. They taught her which plants were safe, how to prepare Apache foods, how to strap Hope to her back in the traditional way. Naiche was true to his word, treating Hope as his own daughter. Sarah often found him in the early mornings, walking with Hope in his arms, singing to her in Apache. Dakia, too, was besotted with his new sister, constantly bringing her small gifts, pretty stones, feathers, flowers. 2 weeks after their arrival, Naiche and Sarah were married in a simple Apache ceremony. Not everyone attended, but enough did to make it legitimate in the eyes of the tribe. Victoria stood as witness, which carried weight. That night, as they lay together as husband and wife for the first time, Hope sleeping peacefully between them and Dakia, curled at their feet, Sarah whispered, "Do you think we've done the right thing?" "I think we've done the only thing," Naiche replied. "We've chosen love over fear, hope over hatred. The world won't understand. Then we'll teach them, one person at a time, starting with these two." He gestured at the sleeping children. Sarah traced her finger along his jaw. "I love you. I didn't expect to, didn't think I could after Thomas. But I do, and I love you, my unexpected gift from the storm." They kissed, soft and sweet, a promise of all the tomorrows to come. Sarah stood at the edge of the valley, Hope on one hip, her belly round with another child. Dakia, now 11, was teaching 5-year-old Hope to track rabbits. The little girl's dark hair, which had indeed stayed dark, bouncing as she tried to copy her brother's silent steps. The world had changed in 5 years. The Apache wars were ending, not in victory, but in exhausted truce. There were talks of integration, of schools where Apache and white children might learn together. It wasn't perfect, far from it, but it was better. Jake Donovan had written last month. He and Diana had 3 children now, were farming successfully in California. His father had never forgiven him, but his mother had visited once, secretly. Small steps. "Mama, look," Hope called out in a mixture of English and Apache. "I found tracks." "Very good, little one," Sarah called back in the same mixed language they all spoke now. Naiche appeared beside her, his arm going around her waist. "Regrets?" he asked, as he did sometimes. Sarah leaned into him, watching their children, for that's what they all were now, blood or not. She thought of Thomas, who she still remembered with love, but no longer with the sharp edge of grief. She thought of the ranch, now sold to new settlers. She thought of the life she'd planned, so different from the one she'd built. "Never," she said, and meant it. Hope ran back to them, Dakia close behind. "Papa," Dakia says, "I'm ready to learn to ride." Naiche scooped her up, making her giggle. "Does he now? And what does your mother think?" "I think," Sarah said, touching her belly where their second child grew, "that this little one will be born into a world where a girl who is both Apache and white can ride wherever she wishes." "Tell us the story again," Hope demanded, "about the storm and the fence." It had become their favorite bedtime story, how their parents met, how their family came to be. Again, Dakia groaned, but he was smiling. "Tonight," Naiche promised. "We'll tell it again tonight." As they walked back to their wickiup, Sarah looked back once at the mountains that had become her home. Somewhere beyond them was the world she'd left behind, with all its rules and divisions and hatreds. But here, in this hidden valley, they'd built something different, something that shouldn't exist but did. A family born of storm and wire, of courage and compassion, of the choice to see beyond the surface to the heart beneath. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. An eagle circled overhead, riding the thermals with effortless grace. Somewhere in the valley, a snake sunned itself on a rock, peaceful in the dying light. The eagle and the snake, sharing the same sky after all. "Come, my loves," Sarah said, gathering her family close. "Let's go home." And they did, walking together into a future that would be complicated and sometimes difficult, but always, always filled with hope. The wooden horse Naiche, that carved still sat on the shelf in their wickiup, watching over them all. Sometimes Sarah would hold it and remember that night of storm and decision. The night she chose to cut the wire and save a stranger. The night that changed everything. She never regretted it. Not once. Love, she had learned, was its own form of courage. And courage, in the end, was just another word for hope.